In this video, I want to break down everything that I heard, through my experienced set of ears and see if we can kind of capture some hidden messages that were being told between the lines between Elon, Jack, and Cathie.
Doing our brainstorms in research, but as we learn more about this open source ecosystem that might fulfill the role of the payment system that the internet neglected to build into the system, not expecting commerce, we thought, this might be something. And then I became even more interested when I realized that my economics would come into play as well here. And Art Laffer, my mentor from USC and a monetary scholar, in 2014, I asked him if he would collaborate on a paper on Bitcoin. And he was a bit of a naysayer at first, but agreed to read the paper. He read the paper, tore it up, and from an economics point of view, really wanted to understand this. And he said, I think you got something here. This is a rules-based monetary system. I've been waiting for this for my entire career. So the combination of disruptive innovation generally, economics on top of that, and the huge misunderstanding out there as to what this is, that was intriguing and launched our research effort.
Thank you. Elon, what's influenced your views on Bitcoin?
Well, I've thought about money for quite a while, obviously, since the PayPal days. And then the companies that preceded that, X.com, which I created, and Confinity, which Peter Thiel, Max Levchin, Luke Howry, and others created. When we combined the companies and made PayPal. So I've been thinking about money for a long time. And really, I think it's best to think of money as an information system, primarily.
Yeah, so for those of you guys who don't know, Elon, was one of the creators of PayPal, and if you listen to some of the early days talks from Elon when they were creating PayPal, like the intention was to create a more efficient monetary system or a means of transacting, over the legacy clunky systems that existed. And I think, and he wanted to do it in a way that was more decentralized and less regulated, and they got shut down, of course, because the only reason that Bitcoin was able to do what it did was because it didn't ask for permission first before launching. And that's why it's such a beautiful idea. Satoshi knew that. He had to remain anonymous, and that it had to grow over time, and that it couldn't be something that was asked for from regulators, because there's no way that they would have approved something like this. And this is the lesson that Elon and friends learned when creating PayPal.
An information system for labor allocation. And for practical purposes, it exists in a series of heterogeneous databases, like very different databases in bank mainframes around the world. It moves quite slowly in reality. It seems to move fast sometimes, and it does with PayPal, which is real time. But the vast majority of the systems out there are batch processing. So the actual reconciliation may take 1 to 5 business days, sometimes longer. And you have the ACH system, which is ancient and still in operation, which is allows transfers, effectively like a check would be an ACH transfer, but it's not secure. And you've got the credit card systems, which are also not secure. It'd be like handing your username and password to a stranger in a restaurant if you buy a meal. So there's definitely an opportunity for something that is better from an information theory standpoint. So and there you can think of like data on a network, I think, is the way to view it. What has the most throughput? What has the least error? What drops the fewest packets? Fraud, for example, being a source of error. And government interference in currencies being a source of error. But it's fundamentally an information system. So I think it makes sense to support something that improves the quality of information with which we conduct the economy. And
so basically what Elon was just saying is about a more trusted manner in the way that the transactions and information are recorded on any type of ledger. Talking about like the ACH system before, and how we have government interference, and it's not immutable, it's not transparent. And right now with Bitcoin, everything is open source. It's ran on a consensus mechanism. It's broadcast to all the validating nodes to make sure that they all have the same history, and that the transaction that's about to be spent, it checks the account balances and make sure that the Bitcoin is in those wallets and before it's sent out. So this is a better, what he's saying is it's right now Bitcoin is a more efficient and trusted version of a currency on in the form of a data transfer in a way. He's making a weird analogy, but that's how Elon is, thinking about it in a very like analytical way.
Bitcoin is a candidate for that. It is, I think, some things well, and it's obviously it's evolving, and there are additional things like Lightning being done on top of Bitcoin. But Bitcoin per se is mostly solving for scarcity, or rather solving for essentially having no throat to choke, decentralized. So there's no one who can be coerced in any way to empty their Bitcoin account. Well, I guess they could technically buy on an individual basis, but the system as a whole cannot. And it has an open ledger, which is also quite good. But transaction volume is low. Transaction cost is high. And usability for the average person is not yet very good. It has a lot of potential. And I should say that, like, I apologize for taking a long time, but there's something there's left to say. In general, I'm a supporter of Bitcoin and the idea of cryptocurrency in general.
I mean, we know Elon, we already know that Elon's a supporter of it. We from what I said earlier, I mean, he was part of creating PayPal, thinking about this stuff long ago. So it's obvious that this is something that he has explored at depth. And that's exactly, if you didn't see the video that we made before, talking about why Elon probably made the statement that he did. And you can tell in this video too, as you watch it, you can tell he's choosing his words carefully from a public perception perspective, because I think that when they made the announcement that they would accept Bitcoin as a payment, obviously Elon knew at that point how energy intensive Bitcoin mining was. But as we explained in the video, and we'll put the link in the description below if you haven't seen that, because it's very interesting. The video that we covered, it's more of this research video of why I believe that Elon made the statement he did, saying that Tesla would no longer accept it as a form of payment until it becomes more energy efficient or green. I don't think that's because he didn't know about it sooner. It's because, watch the video to understand, but basically it has to do with like carbon credits and how Tesla generates a lot of its revenue, not just from selling cars, but being a renewable energy type of company. So just pay attention throughout this video as you're watching it. If you watch the whole thing, you'll notice that he's being very careful with the words he chooses.
But as I said publicly, we need to watch out for crypto taking, especially Bitcoin, using proof of work to maybe use energy that's maybe a bit too much and not necessarily good for the environment. So, but on balance, I support Bitcoin, and I'm not an investor. The only publicly traded stock I own is Tesla, and the only significant thing I own outside of Tesla is my SpaceX stock that could help create both companies. So, but apart from that, I do own Bitcoin, and Tesla owns Bitcoin, SpaceX owns Bitcoin, and I do personally own a bit of Ethereum and Dogecoin, of course. So.
Look how he gives you a little smirk when he talks about Dogecoin. But in a minute here, we're going to get into. He doesn't say it directly, but. In my opinion, it sounds like he's trolling. Like from what you're about to hear coming up, it sounds to me like Elon doesn't genuinely think that Dogecoin is going to become the currency that we end up spending around the world. He even says, like, wouldn't that be ironic? You'll see. Let's play it, and then I'll talk about it.
Okay, great, thank you. And we'll get into some of those issues in more depth as well. Jack, how about you? What shaped your views of Bitcoin?
The network and the community. It's deeply principled. It's weird as hell. It's always evolving, and it just reminded me of the internet when I was a kid. And I encountered alt cypherpunks when I was fairly young, and this was a topic of discussion for years. I didn't touch it until 2008 when we started Square. Elon and teams at X and PayPal inspired a lot of what we were trying to do, trying to bring it more to a physical world. But we encountered this crazy predatory system that was slow, that was obtuse, and I think. One of the things that we tried to do, which X and PayPal also tried to do, is build an abstraction layer around this complication and around this predatory nature that the financial industry can tend to be, and make it work for people. But when I saw Bitcoin in 2009, you see a chance to replace the whole foundation. And everything that Elon was talking about in terms of ACH and the credit card networks were built with very different agendas in a very different time frame. And it's crazy that they still exist. And they have scaled, but they they just are not relevant to today, and they're certainly not relevant to the future, especially when you consider the entire world. And
look, we can look, you can tell at Jack's heart, he's a good guy, and like, I think that when he was creating Square back in the day, and probably when he was creating Twitter back in the day, that like he was, I bet he was super excited, and to do some really revolutionary stuff. And because he was doing it for fundamental reasons. Obviously, he was interested in making a better monetary system, similar to like what Elon was doing and the goals were. But as you watch this video, it seems like Jack's just been beat down by shareholders and shareholder interest. You can just pay attention as you watch this, like that his morale seems to be quite low and disappointed that. I'm sure there's just he's been so restricted by censorship and being told what to do on what they can and cannot post on Twitter and blah blah blah. You can just tell that like he's disappointed by what he's built has had to become. But you can see that he's also working on a decentralized social media platform, which is interesting. We talk about that from time to time on this channel and the shows I do.
Or India, and its interconnection with countries like the United States and Canada and all over Europe. So what really drove my thinking and drives my passion around it is like, if the internet gets a chance to get a native currency, what will that be? And to me, it's Bitcoin because of those principles, because of that creation story, because of its resilience, because of the number of tests it's been. But what inspires me the most is just community driving it. It just reminds me of the early internet. It's the only reason that I have a career, because I learned so much from people like who are building Bitcoin today. And I continue to learn in that sense, and I'm so grateful for it.
So that's a good segue into the next question I'd like to ask you, Jack, is you said before the Bitcoin changes everything. Can you speak more to that?
Well, I just think that a lot of what we experience in life, when you really get down to the foundation, a lot of our monetary policies, a lot of our monetary systems cause so much distraction and so much cost. And when you get to a system where you have the potential for people to truly own it, they can verify it themselves. You don't have to have trust going in. You don't have to trust it at all. You can verify it through source code or whatever your appetite is. And that any particular person can help drive the future of it. And at the same time, it's not controlled by any state. It's not controlled by any bank. It's not controlled by any corporation. And these three parties of people who participate in the network, people who mine, and also the developers, constantly debating the correct roadmap and the way forward, is a beautiful thing. And I don't know of many other consensus-based models that have existed at that scale for this long with this amount of success. And we're still fairly early. So when, I met a woman in Ethiopia 2 years ago, and she was trying to create the lift for Ethiopia. Elon, I think I reached out to you at that time as well because she really wanted some Teslas. She still has to take paper fiat cash from her passengers and pay all of her drivers in the same way because there's no monetary system that she can utilize. There's nothing digital. And Africa as a continent is hugely interconnected from a monetary standpoint, but also hugely taxed in that same way. So a lot of the potential that I see, the internet having a native currency helps her build her business in a much faster way. And also if you consider something like Bitcoin existing before YouTube, before Twitter, before Facebook, a lot of the business models that we have today would not be the same. We would certainly not have the dependency we have upon the advertising business model if Bitcoin existed pre-Twitter. And I think the amount of business models that enables, the amount of innovation it enables going forward, especially when you can consider the whole internet instead of going country by country by country by country, which you have to whenever you're doing with finance, it really just opens the aperture.
So this Jack, notice how Jack gets into a little bit of well, maybe, but I think potentially he's getting a little bit hypocritical here because we know Jack Dorsey to be a Bitcoin maximalist, right? And the question asked by the moderator was that, Jack, you said that the Bitcoin blockchain does everything. As far as it being like the main dominant chain. But then he goes into this talk a little bit later about creating a decentralized internet called, I think it's Blue Sky. So let's listen and see if he talks about, which platform he plans on building that and to what level it will be decentralized. Because we know that we cannot do a whole lot on the Bitcoin blockchain when it comes into smart contracts and decentralized applications yet. And I don't think that it's going to ever happen at the base layer. So there's a lot of issues with the Bitcoin blockchain as a base layer protocol. And there's a lot of interesting innovation. That's why Polkadot exists and Cardano, and because Ethereum just isn't cutting it either. Richard Hart is actually coming out with something really interesting right now, Pulse Chain. We'll do another video diving into that. I'm going to try to get him on channel as well to talk about that. But anyway, I got to jump on another call right now. We'll get back into this video throughout the day when we got some time.